Hi, I'm Lisa Sabaniak from Life Like You Mean It, and today we're talking all about the stages of a spiritual awakening. Now, this video is in three parts. First, we're going to look at the first two stages of a spiritual awakening, which include our wake up call and building of our awareness, along with the bliss that comes with that. Part two, we're going to look at the next two stages to the spiritual awakening, which is not so blissful. And part three, we're going to look at the last two stages of a spiritual awakening when we bring ourselves around full circle and actually start to find the power within. So let's get started. So before we start with part one, if you haven't seen my video just before this about the truth about a spiritual awakening, then stop right here and go and have a quick look at that. It talks about what a spiritual awakening is, the myth, and the truth about it. So that's a great starting point for you. Now for part one of our video, which is looking at our first two stages, which is really our wake up call that we have, where we start to see our 3D world around us for what it is. We start to realize that there's more to life. We start to raise our awareness. We start to feel a bit of connection and start to just ask some questions that we weren't asking before. We start to really start to see that there is more to us than just our mere body, that this 3D experience is different from how we were actually experiencing it before. And so, this is what I like to call the awareness. These two kind of stages together are called awareness for me, because it's really awakening up and becoming aware of yourself, the world around you, and your place in it. And once you start to do that, your idea of connection starts to really grow. And that brings us to our second stage, which is bliss. Now, as this stage implies, it is absolutely blissed out because you feel that connection. It's not just a concept that you have anymore, but you actually feel connected to all things, not just other humans, but to blades of grass as you walk in a field, where you are feeling that you are at one with everything. And it changes your perspective on how you are seeing things, particularly problems that we would have seen as problems before. And it really puts you in an absolutely blissed out state. How beautiful is that? Now, that stage can last for days, weeks, months, even, right? It depends on the person. But the next stage that we go into, which brings us to part two of our video, is our next two stages, which are not blissful at all. So let's start with the first one, which is the dark night of the soul, or as I prefer to call it, the dark night of the ego, because I don't feel like the soul has a dark side, but the ego most certainly does. So the dark night of the soul is actually a tremendous opportunity for us. It's just that, like in a lot of things, it doesn't really feel very positive at the time, because this opportunity is for us to look at ourselves. And I mean, really look at ourselves. We become very clear in this stage of our spiritual awakening of what we have been representing in this world, in our life so far, what we have done to others, our karmic debts that we have at play here, what has been done to us, what our reactions have been, our inner child, the wounded ego, all of these things come. That doesn't necessarily mean that you have to relive past traumas, but you do have to take a very clear look at your life and the role that you've been playing in it. And so this stage can last a very short period of time, but it can also last a very long period of time, as in years, because most people, when they go from the blissed out feeling of connectedness and oneness into the dark night of the ego, you can just imagine, if you haven't experienced this yourself already, you can just imagine that it actually has the potential of feeling like you are completely disconnected, that that blissed out experience that you had was just some sort of fluke, that that wasn't a spiritual awakening. Because if you were awakening, surely you wouldn't be feeling this discomfort. Surely you wouldn't be faced with all this work to do. Surely you wouldn't be reminded that you have a wounded inner child that needs care, love, support, and healing. But clearly, these things wouldn't be here if you were going through a spiritual awakening. And that's the thing about the dark night of the ego. Of course, they will. This is your opportunity to transform, your opportunity to heal and shift your perspective on your life, which is a tremendous opportunity. The sooner you can wrap your head around that and realize that this part that you are going through right now is part of your spiritual awakening, then the more you will embrace this. And instead of looking at these different things that pop up as real serious challenges and signs that you are not on your right path, or however else you might interpret that, you see them for what they are, the opportunities that they are. And then you tend to work through them a bit faster than what you would if you were in a state of resistance. Our other stage that we go through in this kind of unblissful stage here is really disconnection. We feel like after we come out of the dark night of the ego, we've done all of this work and we're so proud of ourselves and we can feel it shifting, right? We feel our energy change. And then the connection seems to be gone. That divine connection, the connection with oneness, it feels like it's empty. It feels like there isn't one. Which again, if we've lost sight of the fact that this is a spiritual awakening, it's purposeful and it's opportunity for us, we can very much feel this whole time that we have been on our wrong path, right? Can feel very um, not in sync, right? Misaligned, if you will. But what's really happening is that emptiness there is not a lack of connection. It's actually a growing connection that's happening within. And that brings us to our next stage. Side note, if you are loving the concept of this video, then I am so grateful. I've got something else that you might really enjoy, which is a whole nother playlist about working with the moon. So in that, we look at the shadow work that you can be doing specifically for every single chakra, working with the full moon to release, and then again, working with the new moon for every single chakra for how you can bring in new intentions and manifestations to heal that particular chakra. So go ahead and check that out right here. So part 3 of our video here, the last 2 stages of our spiritual awakening, we come full circle and we start to gain that connection back. The connection that we had before when we were in bliss felt like a connection from us to something else, to the outside, to God, Goddess, universe, right? Something else. And now, this opportunity, the emptiness that presented itself after the dark night of the ego, was specifically to sever that so that you would stop looking to the outside of yourself, to the exterior, for the knowledge, the wisdom, the intuition, the guidance, and you find it instead within yourself. And so these last 2 stages of a spiritual awakening are groundedness, right? You start to feel that connection with oneness again, but it's not separate. It's not out there, right? The power is within. You begin to surrender now. And you also, the last stage is you feel a deep alignment with your soul purpose in life. You have an understanding, a palpable understanding of what it is, and a drive to make sure that you reach that and achieve that soul purpose. I hope you enjoyed this video and that it helped you immensely. I so love serving you in this way. Our next video on this is going to look deeper at the hardest part of the spiritual awakening, which in my opinion is the dark night of the ego. So that video, we're going to go into more detail about that specifically. So go ahead, if you haven't already, subscribe to my channel and make sure that you do not miss the notification for that video. Bless.